Alrighty, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for attending this session on Veeam-powered network, the best free networking tool you probably don't know about. So my name's Anthony Spiteri. I'm a technical evangelist at Veeam Software. I'm a V-expert, NSX, vSAN, and I blog at anthonyspiteri.net, or virtualization is life. Bit of a disclaimer here, and this is the generic one that everyone's got to do here at VMworld, but it's interesting because this product that I'm going to talk about is actually an RC at the moment. So just bear in mind as we talk about the product, Veeam-powered network, it's actually an RC. So you guys might be sitting there thinking, well, wait, Veeam's doing networking now. What's all that about? So in theory, it's a good question to ask, but in reality, Veeam's actually been doing things with networking for quite a while. So if you guys are Veeam customers, you would be fairly familiar with our concept of Sure Backups, Virtual Labs, which has a networking component in it. And also, more recently with Cloud Connect, our actual Cloud Connect replication has a network extension appliance, which is an edge appliance that basically feeds internet services in a replica scenario. So Veeam has got a history of doing networking products. Veeam-powered network sits within a branch or an umbrella product we call Direct Restore to Microsoft Azure. So I'm not going to spend too much time talking about Azure. Obviously we're at VMworld, so I don't want to give Azure too much cred. But basically what we've done is we've taken two products. We've taken our Direct Restore to Microsoft Azure, and we've paired that with this Veeam-powered network to create the recovery in Microsoft Azure. So forgetting the Azure piece, on its own, Veeam-powered network is a standalone free tool which is available for download from veeam.com right now. So actually go and download it, even though it's an RC. And it's also available in an installable from a linux.com repository, okay? And what it does, it basically gives users the ability to create site-to-site and point-to-site connectivity, okay? We're really talking about situations where you want to try and connect up a main office site, a home office, temporary location in the case of a disaster, or on the road while traveling, okay? And I think more importantly, obviously we're here in the Solutions Exchange, those who have home labs, it's a really good way to basically hook into your home lab as well. Again, free of charge. So have a look at the screen here. I just want to go through a little bit about overarching logical architecture of it. So you've got a Veeam-powered network hub server or appliance, and that can sit really in any cloud, any on-premises location that has internet accessible. You then have a Veeam PM site gateway, which sits on-premises, a main office HQ. And then what happens is we do a network connection site-to-site or point-to-site from the hub to the sites, which then extends those networks out to those clients. Okay, so very simple, very hub and spoke-like in its architecture, but it works beautifully for those sort of scenarios that I've put up on the screen there. In terms of the components, there's a standalone Linux OVA appliance, so you can get an OVA, you download it, you deploy it as an OVA into your vSphere technology. You can then actually take an Ubuntu server as well, 16.04 as a minimum, and actually configure the repositories as well from a Linux repo. Do an apt-get install and it'll basically install the services. The solution is really designed to make VPN easy, okay? We're talking about simpler to configure, we're talking about user-friendly and easier to manage. And really the goal of the product is to really simplify what is traditionally a complex and cumbersome process. We all know how difficult it can be to configure IPsec, two ends that are disparate technologies, different hardware types, different encryption, different other technologies, right? What we're trying to do is really make this simplified and easy for you. So again, from the diagram, the main aspect of the hub of the Veeam-powered network is the hub, okay? That sits in the location, and then all the spokes that you saw in that diagram connect into it. The hub is the core piece of infrastructure, and it's responsible for all that you see on the screen: traffic routing, encryption, user management, and authentication. The hub is accessible from all remote networks, and it adds to the VPN. If we go through, oops, take it back. If we go through the other components, we've then got these site gateways. The site gateway is actually the same appliance. That connects up to the hub, okay? I'm going to show you guys in a second through a demo how easy it is to configure those sites to connect back into the hub. That's a bit of an overview, so you can see where the hub and spoke architecture comes. We've got a main site there, which hosts the hub. That then connects up to the sites, and we've also got the remote connectivity in there. So remote clients, and the remote connectivity is actually interesting. All this is built on OpenVPN. So our developers have taken OpenVPN and put effectively a user interface on it for the easier installation and configuration. If we look at the site-to-site configuration, it obviously allows you to configure a secure connectivity. All traffic to a remote site is routed and secure, okay? So if you guys have used IPsec VPNs, OpenVPN before, this is exactly what it is. We're not trying to change anything with regards to that. It's still the same premise there. The VPN supports two types of deployment models, as I've mentioned before. It supports deployment on Microsoft Azure. It also supports deployment on the on-premises network, as I've mentioned. The network hub acts as a central point, and then again connects to different types of remote hubs and also endpoints as well. And this is an example, a very simplified example of a site-to-site network. So again, site A, site B, you've got one disparate network subnet connecting to the other, okay? That's the premise of this solution. If we talk about point-to-site, we're really talking about end users. We're talking about guys on the road, guys with laptops, maybe a server that hasn't got internet connectivity through a router. You might want to actually do something and configure the OpenVPN client to talk to the actual hub server to get connectivity through to this service. As we move through, you can see that the point-to-site connection is configured by deploying a little XML file that is taken from the hub. It's then deployed and configured into your OpenVPN client. And the great thing about OpenVPN is it's across many platforms. Windows, Linux, Mac OS, even on your iPhones, right? You can configure and connect the OpenVPN platform. It's a little XML file that downloads and configures that. And here's another example of what it looks like. In terms of configuration, you can actually deploy this within 5 minutes, okay? Once you've deployed the appliance, which obviously will vary, 5 minutes, you can actually have this thing configured. You can configure the hub, get the configuration items, and configure the sites. And then take a configuration item for an endpoint and actually mesh it all together in that hub and spoke mentality. So now I'm going to go through a not so live demo, which is a video recording of that process. And in this demo, once it plays, okay. So this is actually the screen of VPN. So as you can see here, we've got a client section. In this client section, you come in and say, to your components, we've got the site subnet, and we give it a name. When that's configured, we then can go and actually configure endpoints. And the endpoints are very easy. They're literally just a single name that dictates what endpoint you got. And from there, what you can actually do is download these configuration files. And you can see we're downloading an XML file and an OpenVPN configuration file. What we're going to go down here is you can see that we've got a couple of connections. We've got the site connection, and we've also got the endpoint connection. And what I'm doing here is on my Mac, I'm using that OpenVPN configuration file to connect into that hub server. Okay? In a few seconds, we're going to go green, and we should see that disconnected state turn to connected. That's how easy it is. In a couple of seconds, we've got a connected network there. Okay? No fuss. What I'm now going to do is go to that site that was previously configured and connected. I'm actually going to wipe the configuration. So this is obviously a pre-deployed appliance. It's a site gateway. I'm going to go and reset this config and get it back to the mode that's actually out of the box as you would go and just install it. So give it a second to go through. We'll log in. And then you see you've got a couple of options here. Network hub or site gateway. You can actually configure this as that network hub as well. What I'm going to do here is go and configure it as a site gateway. I'm going to look at the configuration file, which you saw we configured at the hub appliance. I'm going to load that up. And then in the back end, it's going to go in and connect to the hub. That's going to be disconnected in a second. Let's wait for that to go through. So once it reloads, we should see that state disconnected, because remember we wiped the config. Okay, disconnected. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this two-step process. I'm going to import this XML file. It's going to load the configuration, and it's going to go and connect up the hub to the site again. So in a few seconds, we should see that connected. And you can see on the hub end, we've got that connected and connected to the site. And that's pretty much it. So you can see there, really easy scenario, really easy way of getting it. And what I'm going to actually do here is I'm going to try and ping from my laptop an endpoint that's in that remote site, okay? So you can see the ICMP response, and then I'm even going to go and do a little RDP test here, okay? So think about the applications for this, not only from a business perspective, small, medium business, but also from your own perspective, being able to do configuration items, trying to configure into your home labs, remote access. It's actually what I use day to day to configure into my home lab. So just to finish off, a couple of example designs. We've got a simple remote site design. Really, we're talking about a single premises here. It's got the Veeam hub that's in there. In this scenario, the Veeam hub is actually also configured as a site gateway. You've then got the Open VPN client which connects in. Okay, very simple, the most basic type of scenario that you can configure. This scenario is kind of cool. This is actually the scenario that I have in my home lab. You can have a look here. Got my home office with my physical ESXi infrastructure. I've got my nested ESXi hosts and networks. I've got a hub that sits in Azure in this case, but then I'm connecting back to these site gateways, and two of these site gateways are actually nested as well in my environment. I can then, through my MacBook, go and connect to the hub and talk to each network. Okay, so think about use cases here. But what I really like is this example, the cloud to cloud to cloud. So again, being able to do this and achieve this historically has been problematic, complex, and expensive, okay? With Veeam Powered Network, what I've been able to do is effectively mesh these different zones. And these are actually vCloud Director zones in Australia, in Perth, Melbourne, and Sydney. And very easily, I've been able to deploy the VPN site gateways into each zone. I've been able to then connect up. I've done some static routes between each zone so they know basically where to go. I can then connect in from any location and access any service that's in any location. Okay? So have a think about the power of this solution, and it's free, okay? So what I want you guys to do after this is to go to this Veeam.com site, so KB2271. That's where you can actually go and download the RC. You can actually go to my blog, anthonyspiteri.net, and do a search for Veeam Powered Network and download all the bits. So hopefully you've seen enough to be tempted to go and use this product, and thank you for listening.